The state government is preparing to ban local councils from issuing ticketless parking fines. It comes as the number of unsuspecting drivers being booked doubled. Here's Kate Creedon.
Returning to your car to find you've got a parking fine is frustrating, but receiving a ticket in the mail days later is downright rude. Despite the Finance Minister telling councils to cut it out, ticketless parking fines have almost doubled. In the past year, more than 822,000 unsuspecting drivers copped a fine in the post, compared to 551,000 the year before. Now, Courtney Housos is doubling down.
Change is coming. We will intervene. We will use the policy levers at our disposal because we want a fairer system for parking fines in New South Wales.
Currently, 48 councils are issuing ticketless parking fines, raking in $158 million between them. Unsurprisingly, those making the most money are reluctant to give it up. The City of Sydney, North Sydney Council and Canterbury Bankstown Council argue it's safer for parking rangers. But if the government does intervene, they could be forced to revert to traditional parking fines.
Kate, thank you.
What isn't fun is if you're a rideshare driver, apparently, on Jetty Road, because many claim they're racking up fines of over $100 for the simple act of dropping off their passengers.
Indeed. Now, this was one of the things we actually started hearing about this a few weeks ago, but couldn't get much more information on it. Now, Bobby McCumber, you are down on Jetty Road at Glenelg. Bobby, is there anywhere that you can drop off where there is not a yellow line?
Yeah, look, at the moment, Jetty Road is pretty quiet, so there's plenty of parking spaces that you can come into and drop off passengers. But as we know, during the afternoons and the evenings, it does get a lot busier, and it is a lot harder to find a park. So it's in these cases where people are getting dropped off, and they might be parking in front of either yellow lines or in front of other cars, and rather than finding a spot. And so this is where people are getting pinged by these new CCTV cameras that have been installed here on Jetty Road. And like you've mentioned, a lot of the rideshare drivers, these are the guys getting pinged because they are just literally dropping passengers off as quickly and as fast as they can and picking them up as well. So I can see...
They don't want to park, do they? They actually want to just drop on and off. They want to do it quickly.
Yeah, well, that's it. Exactly. So they're just dropping off, picking up, but they are getting pinged for... by these cameras. Look, the City of Holdfast Bay Council have said quite clearly no driver should stop on a yellow line. They've also said that the majority of parking monitoring is done by community safety officers. But as we've said, here on Jetty Road, they have recently installed these CCTV cameras. So drivers, mainly rideshare drivers, are getting pinged and fined for it.
Well, if you live in that part of the world, maybe you're a rideshare driver, maybe you're just a resident. What do you think of this situation? 1300 222 891. Because, Bobby, we are joined by a rideshare driver who has received at least one fine that we've read about today. He's from the Adelaide Rideshare group. His name is John Hall. Welcome, John. What did you get fined for?
Hi. I was dropping off a group on the corner of Moseley Street and was there for probably 10, 20 seconds, and unbeknown to me, I got snapped by a fixed camera on a pole there. And the unfortunate thing was I didn't hear about it for 2 months until I got the fine.
So it referred to an incident when you got the fine for something that happened a couple of months before. That seems a long wait in between.
It's huge when you think that you could do the same thing and over and over in the meantime, and really the intent of a fine should be to discourage repeat behaviour, which is hard when they're taking 8 weeks to send it out.
So, John, just talk through what actually happened for you to receive that fine. Who was in your car? Why did they get out in a place that had a yellow line?
Okay, I was taking 3 young ladies. They were meeting some friends down at the Jetty bar there, and they'd spotted their friends and were quite excited and started to open the door actually out in the traffic lane. So to be safe, I pulled over quickly to the side, which happened to be where the yellow line was, to let them out. And they jumped out and I just went on my way, and that's when I got clicked and fined by the camera.
Are you the only rideshare operator you know in the group that's received a fine on Jetty Road at Glenelg?
No, in fact, about a month ago, I think it was up to 90, so I'm sure it's probably well over that by now that of our group members, over 90 of us have received fines. One fine was even in someone pulling over to let an ambulance go past. While they stopped on the line, they got snapped and received a fine.
John, have you thought about challenging these fines?
I've challenged it twice, so I've completed the statutory declaration that the council suggests you do, stating exactly what I just told you about the safety aspect of dropping the passenger off. They refused it, said no, I stopped, and we subsequently also, about a group of our drivers met with the council face-to-face to discuss it. It appeared to be a positive meeting, and they said to again to dispute it, and that was back in about the 26th of June, I think it was, the meeting, and we've heard nothing since then.
And so the fine stands?
It still stands, even after the face-to-face meeting as well.
So what do you think needs to happen, John, then?
Well, I think for a start, if you've got 18 cameras taking sneaky snapshots of people, there should be a sign on each post there warning people that this is a camera that will issue fines if you stop on the yellow line. There's nothing like that down there at all.
John, are you likely to accept jobs on Jetty Road, Glenelg, either dropping off or picking up, if this is what you're risking?
Well, it's actually impacted my behaviour everywhere in the city. So in the past, I would be, okay to stop for a second to pick someone up, even in the city. But now I'll pull over to the side street and ask them to come and walk down and meet me down, where it's legal to park. So it has changed. It's inconvenienced people, especially people with disability, that maybe can't walk that far.
So, John, do you think that more parking spaces should be made available for, say, rideshare cars in Adelaide and predominantly Glenelg?
Definitely. That was actually the main driver of our meeting. We were pushing, and we went to the extent of providing some maps and showing them where we'd like to have places located. So far, the only response since the meeting has been to repaint the yellow line that was a bit faded.
It's interesting, though. We're talking about Jetty Road, Glenelg. You say you've got similar concerns in other parts of the city. Is this something that's increasingly apparent just for rideshare operators and cab drivers, and I guess anyone picking up teenagers or children and young people working?
Definitely. In fact, the yellow line issue seems to have gone out of control. There's a corner in the main King William Street North Terrace corner in Adelaide where we often have to pick people up. We used to be able to go down a laneway. Recently, that laneway has had yellow lines painted all the way around at both sides. So the closest legal spot to pick up someone from that rooftop bar on the corner there is probably over on Hindley Street, which is probably 200 or 300 metres away.
Sounds like it's really tough to do your job then.
It's very tough to do it legally.
Yeah, it is. Well, we get back to whether these fines are to raise revenue or to discourage dangerous behaviour, because let's face it, the majority of people who order Ubers, especially on busy Friday, Saturday nights, are jumping into cars often that cannot legally pull over in a space. And even if they could, often those spaces are already taken up.
Well, I mean, you might want to argue about that side of things and think that that's, it's illegal to park on a yellow line, whatever. You might have that argument. But that example of someone who just pulled over to let an ambulance through, it'd be hard to argue that that wasn't a reasonable thing to do, wouldn't it?
Well, that seems ridiculous. And also, if what John is saying is true, and there's no reason to disbelieve him, if someone has opened the door to a moving car, and there are people who are drunk in these ride shares, and there are people who are drunk who are getting into them, then you have to stop as a driver because you risk injuring someone. Indeed. So, I'm surprised that you weren't able to challenge that fine successfully, John.
Just looking at the...
Meet me down, where it's legal to park. It's inconvenienced people, especially people with disability, that maybe can't walk that far.
So that's a little bit of what John Hall, rideshare driver from Adelaide Rideshare Group, had to say. We did ask the City of Holdfast Bay if there was someone that could speak to us. They said there's no one available. I do have a statement that I'll get to in a moment from them. Before that, though, Karen Stanley is traffic lawyer with Stanley Law and joins us this afternoon. Karen, thank you for your time this afternoon.
You're very welcome.
So what are the rules around being able to use CCTV to fine people for offences like this?
There is nothing in the legislation that says that cameras can't be used to detect speeding fines. In fact, there's nothing in the legislation that talks about not speeding fines, about fines in general. There's nothing in the law that says it has to be by an eyewitness, or it has to be by a camera being held by someone, or that it can't be by CCTV cameras.
Okay. And then what does the law say about stopping on a yellow line if you are using that space to pick up or drop off passengers?
I'm afraid I have some very, very bad news for the taxi drivers. The law says it's an offence to stop on a yellow line. There are some exceptions, and one of those exceptions is to get out of the way of an emergency vehicle. So the driver who was given a fine would have had a defence if that was taken to court. But otherwise, you cannot stop your car on a yellow line. So there's no exemption for a couple of seconds here, or to pick up and drop off passengers, or for the safety of passengers.
Okay.
So strictly speaking, if you stop on the side of a road where there is a yellow line for whatever reason, other than the exceptions set out in the law, which are very, very limited, then you are committing an offence. I will add, I think it's a little bit uncool of the council to suddenly start issuing these fines without some prior notification. Because of the impact it's going to have on lots of people, and I certainly don't think it's safe for people to be walking down side streets to be meeting Ubers or taxis. But legally, the council is in the right here.
Okay, but there's the potential that you could put signage up as a kind of measure of goodwill and as a way of trying to spread the message, which I guess ultimately is, hey, please don't stop here.
I think there is certainly a lot of goodwill that can be engaged in by the council. I think this is, while legally correct, it is leading to some really unfair outcomes. And look, I agree that there's a problem with cars parking where there is a yellow line, but I'm sure that the council can work with the drivers to find a remedy that works well for everybody and keeps the roads safe by not having cars parking on a yellow line, but still allowing appropriate use of vehicles that keep passengers safe.
Okay. Do you know whether do councils have the right to have some form of discretion? You've mentioned that, okay, by the letter of the law, there are very few exceptions. Is there maybe a less formal discretion that could be applied by a council when something changes, or as a kind of bedding in period, if I can put it that way?
There is always discretion with fines. So there is in the legislation, there is scope for a body that issues fines to waive the fine if it is trifling. They use the word. I have very, very rarely seen that utilised.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I can give a personal example myself. Several years ago, I had to go to the emergency ward at the Royal Adelaide Hospital. I got a parking fine. I was able to write to them and explain why, and it was waived. So there is a level of discretion, but the councils don't have to exercise that discretion.
And I'd guess that if you got to the point of engaging a lawyer, it would kind of become a bit of a moot point, because that would probably cost more than the cost of the fine.
Oh, it definitely costs more than the cost of the fine. And there is also risk in going to court, because if you challenge a council fine and you lose in court, then the council can ask the costs, and they do. And those costs are often $5,000 or $6,000. So I don't recommend lightly that people take these fines to court.
Mm. We also heard this morning in that discussion from John Hall, he discussed as another part of that conversation that he's seen what he believes are some new yellow lines going in on King William Street in the city. I wonder, do you know whether we're starting to see councils of varying jurisdictions starting to put more of those lines down, and then, as you say, does some accommodation then or alternative need to be made?
I'm not aware of further lines. I'm aware of lots of roadworks around the city, but there has to be a process that the Department of Transport or the city councils have to go through to change parking or standing on the roads or changing the road signage. But I certainly think that there is scope for all the bodies that hand out fines to have a period where they're going to let the public know, okay, we can detect you by camera. We are going to start to issue fines. For this, we will give you a 3-month warning, like the police have quite reasonably done with the mobile phone cameras. There's certainly scope for that.
Okay. Karen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
You're very welcome.
That's Karen Stanley, traffic lawyer with Stanley Law. A couple of your texts coming through on this. Deb at Warradale saying not being able to pull over and stop for an ambulance is ridiculous. What a driver's supposed to do when people's lives are at stake. Another person says Tea Tree Council have perfected the art of issuing infringements via photographs. I got done while pulled over in the bike lane that never gets used to answer an urgent phone call. I was there for less than 2 minutes and got a fine in the post a couple of weeks later, and that cost me about $490. Let me know what you think about this. 0467 922 891. Is it important that these yellow lines, well, the rules are followed, that they're there for a good reason, to keep traffic flowing and to keep the traffic movement safe? Or does there need to be some level of discretion, or maybe when a new technology is being brought in, a broader awareness campaign? Let me know what you think. 0467 922 891. As I say, the City of Holdfast Bay have declined to join us. They have sent through quite a lengthy statement. I'll read some of that. It says, the City of Holdfast Bay has a camera specifically monitoring a high safety risk area on the corner of Jetty Road and Moseley Street in Glenelg. This is to monitor for statutory offences under the Australian road rules, such as cars stopping on a yellow line. The majority of monitoring of parking infringements is undertaken by Council's community safety officers. Cameras are used in areas deemed to be a significant safety risk or in identified problem areas where officer input hasn't had an effect, and then reiterates the point that it's a significant safety risk in that area. Vehicles stopping on the corner prevent buses from using the junction. They can block the roads and mask pedestrians crossing the roads. They also do say in the statement they're working with rideshare organisations, are looking at creating more spaces for all types of drop-offs, for example, short-term parking bays. And they say if you have a concern regarding a parking fine, get in contact and they will review it. 0467 922 891 is the text number. It's 23 past 1. Up next, the GP shortage has been having a big impact on our health system. The AMA is saying
Thank you so much, Chair. My name's Dr. Liam Byrne from the Australian Council of Trade Unions. I'm the Future of Work and Unionism Project Coordinator. And just a note,
Joseph.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Joseph Mitchell and I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions.
Jack Boutros from the National Office of the Transport Workers Union, and I'm a campaign lead.
I invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to members' questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to the committee today on such an important issue. I'm very pleased to be joined with me today by Utsav Batari and Benjamin Fairless, both two proud members of the Transport Workers Union in the gig economy, and also proud to be joined by Jack Boutros from the TWU. The union movement has a positive and proactive attitude towards the introduction of new technologies at work. We're excited about the potential that new technologies have to make jobs more meaningful and to augment the skills and experiences of workers to boost productivity and generate economic growth. But we are also aware of the significant risks that arise if we don't get this right. Prime among them is the threat that AI will be used to make Australia a less fair place in creating a race to the bottom on wages and working conditions while cutting jobs. It's not just job cuts, though, that we are worried about. It is the use of AI to worsen working conditions that we already have and the quality of jobs. Unions believe that all Australians should have a say in how AI is being used to change our lives, that these decisions should not just be made by large multinationals and by some of the biggest businesses in Australia. If we get AI implementation right, it could deliver incredible benefits. It could boost productivity, ensure higher wages, enhance our quality of living and standard of life. The introduction of AI is something that all too often happens to workers, not with them. And we will never make the most of AI and its potential if we don't have a coordinated approach that actively involves workers at the centre of decision-making processes. It does not mean being told after decisions have been already made, but being treated as genuine partners in change. Rights in our workplaces were designed before the mass introduction of AI into workplaces and do not anticipate or respond to new realities. We can't allow our laws to be superseded by new technology again. Or that Australia is meeting the challenges of AI transition with the agility and assurance that we will mitigate potential social harm while encouraging the use of AI that will serve the social good. This will need to be an ongoing process, drawing down on the expertise and capacity of unions, governments and employers alike.
You'll hear committee members from gig workers we have with us today, Ben and Utsav, and what you'll hear from them is that we are seeing 21st century technology used to return workers to 19th century exploitation. We must ensure tech works for everyone to improve workers' lives, not make work harder or push workers beyond safe limits. We need to have extensive consultation in place with the people who have the lived day-to-day experiences in those jobs at the moment. Workers and our community rightly expect their safety to remain the first priority.
Of the committee members, I stand before you today not just as Utsav Bhattarai, a food delivery driver from Canberra, but as a voice for countless gig workers who find themselves at the mercy of a system that is increasingly driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning. As transport gig workers, we are the frontline recipients of automated tech-based work allocation. Every task we undertake, every route we navigate, every second of our labor is monitored and judged by algorithms. In many ways, our jobs have become the test case for how AI can reshape the workplace. And while this technology holds remarkable potential, it also carries profound risks that have not been adequately managed by any government so far. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine waking up every day knowing that your livelihood is dictated by an algorithm, a cold, unfeeling piece of code that determines whether you get work, how much you're paid, and whether you'll still have a job tomorrow. There's no transparency, no negotiation, just a digital overload that issues commands we must obey. If we decline too many jobs, the algorithm takes note. If we're delayed by traffic, the algorithm sends warnings, threatening to deactivate us if we don't speed up. And if a customer is dissatisfied, the algorithm decides our fate. No questions asked, no context considered. The pressures of the system are immense. We're pushed to rush, to take risks, to work long hours, all in the name of efficiency. But this efficiency comes at a deadly cost. In Australia alone, at least 15 food delivery drivers have lost their lives while on the job. These are not just statistics. They are real people with families and dreams, all cut short because a machine prioritized speed over safety. But the dangers extend beyond physical harm. There's a quite but profound loss of dignity when you realize that every move you make is being judged by a machine that neither understands nor cares about you. Recently, I raised a safety issue through the app, an issue that concerned my well-being on the job. The response I received was automated, irrelevant, and entirely disconnected from the reality of my situation. Lastly, I would like to say that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around.
My name is Benjamin Fairless. I've been a rideshare driver since 2016. Over that time, I've witnessed the impact of automated decision-making in our economy and the gig economy in particular over about 8 years. Really powerful points raised today. I wish that I could come on and say, you know what, these are isolated incidents, but the fact of the matter is that they're not. A lot has changed since I first walked into an Uber office in Subiaco in Perth in 2016 to sign up as a driver. There wasn't back then. There wasn't even food delivery. I would walk in. It was great to be able to speak with a local person who understood the city, understood our difficulties, and somebody who was able to provide a personal and a human touch. Now, there has been a significant change over the last several years to less people, more automation, and more artificial, especially around decision making. In the few months I've been a gig worker delegate, I've spoken with numerous drivers who are automatically cut off because of a complaint that's been made. And it is standing somebody down without pay. It's creating a situation where individuals. If that happened to me today, Uber says they've got up to 7 days to review it. That's a week that I don't get paid. I'm already paid less than minimum wage after expenses. So how am I supposed to pay my rent? How am I supposed to pay my bills? And then after that 7 days, I would be reinstated. And but I don't get anything back for that. I need to take advantage of the opportunities without putting workers, especially low-paid workers like Utsav and I, at risk. We should not be the victims of progress. We absolutely should be, considered. Automation is great. Technology has allowed me the opportunity to keep working when I otherwise wouldn't be able to. But I don't deserve, and Utsav doesn't deserve, and the tens of thousands of gig workers in Australia don't deserve to become a victim of progress. We need government intervention, and we need government oversight, and we need guardrails so that we can reap the rewards without continuing to take from the lowest paid people, some of the lowest paid people in the country.
Thank you so much, Ben, and your staff, and to all of our witnesses participating in this part of the hearing. We will go to the member for Chisholm for the first series of questions today, but I did just want to acknowledge your staff and Ben for your evidence today. You're the first workers we've actually had with lived experience participating in our inquiry so far. So I do want to recognise your courage and willingness to speak up, not just about your experience, but the experience of your fellow workers. We tend to get in these hearings a lot of peak bodies, a lot of representative organisations participating, but it's great to hear direct from workers. So thank you. And we'll go to the member for Chisholm, Karina, to ask the first lot of questions.
Both in terms of the surveillance that's happening and what is, perhaps breaching a notion of privacy, as well as what happens to the data once it's collected and who owns it, and consultation around how that's used. I'm just really interested in that the broad field of surveillance and data, in understanding a bit further some of the ways in which reform and regulation and consultation could take shape. So that's my first question. So I'll let you answer that, and then I might throw my second question after.
Thank you very much, Karina, and really appreciate you asking a question on surveillance, because it is a really broad and nuanced topic with respect to the introduction of AI. Surveillance, and what we think about surveillance is nuanced and reinforces the point that we make at the very start of every conversation we have about AI, which is that workers' voices should be at the centre of the introduction of change of technology at work, and should be able to be negotiated, and the way in which surveillance is used and incorporated at work should be subject to a negotiation and agreement by workers. But conversely, we see inappropriate surveillance and monitoring, which has been enhanced by AI, used enormously negatively for working people, resulting in work intensification, inappropriate surveillance while at work and not at work, and undisclosed surveillance. And what we have is a series of workplace rights which anticipate a reasonable level of surveillance by employers to ensure the protection of their property and the operation of their businesses, that does not anticipate unblinking permanently monitoring, harvested surveillance, and then the potential for that data to be sold on to third parties. That is a massive gap in our workplace relations law and needs to be solved.
The matters that you've raised, can you just talk us through if you've raised these matters with Fair Work Australia or with Safe Work Australia or any of the state safety bodies? If you have, what's been the experience? Where might sort of investigations sort of be at now? Or if you haven't, why haven't you? And kind of, are there any gaps that are preventing you from being able to raise these quite significant concerns with the authorities and the regulators that we already have in place?
Thanks for the question, Lisa. Yes, I'm one of the world's first health and safety representative in gig economy. Obviously, I think the question is why we haven't raised, if we have safety issues, why we haven't raised this with Safe Work or something similar. Because as a gig driver, the legislation is not clear to us. It says so any workers can come to WorkSafe and report their issues, but it's not, because we're classified as small business owner. So I'm not sure if as a small business owner I have the right to go to Safe Work and report these issues.
Thank you. ACTU, could you just expand for us where you see sort of some of the gaps could be? It feels like a bit of a clunky process for even these workers who clearly are exposed to AI on a regular basis in their workplace to be able to sort of raise concerns. Where do you think the gaps could be in that sort of framework that already exists?
So one of the biggest gaps that we see is in the woefully inadequate introduction of change regime. These regimes are not robust enough to ensure that workers are adequately consulted when AI is impacting their work. It's also clear that our bargaining frameworks do not allow for workers to bargain over the introduction of AI, how it's used and what it will be used for. And it is these two key pillars that we want to see addressed. The last thing that we want to see addressed is how decisions are made and what is relied upon when it comes to making decisions.
As we've heard today from our gig economy workers, transport workers, you're everywhere. You don't actually have that physical workplace presence in the sense that there's no clock on, clock off. You probably don't even get to meet your fellow drivers or your other co-workers because you're scattered across the country and even scattered across towns. So how do you see, or how should we be starting to really coordinate a consultation of change process when your workers are sort of on every street, in every home, in every Apple device, so to speak? How do you see that consultation occurring effectively?
We need structures in place that bring business, unions, workers together to have conversations about how these challenges are met, particularly to your point, Chair, when we have fragmented, isolated industries with people spread out around the country. And we know that's all the more common with AI and automation as that continues to be integrated into the workforce.
Very hard as workers in the gig economy, even being in the same city, to meet and connect and to discuss change that occurs. At the moment, change in the workplace in gig is dictated by the multinational company that operates in that space. As the committee may or may not be aware, there was a recent announcement that there would be a change to the rates of pay for drivers, and to paraphrase the email, it was basically, we're going to be changing rates, we're going to be changing them on this date, and we don't know what the change is going to look like yet, but it's going to be less than what you're currently being paid.
Final comments before we wrap up today.
Chair, just in regard to the point about consultation, which has come up a few times today, I just think it's worth stating that in the world at the moment, the best practice research is being done, particularly that concentrated at MIT, which unfortunately we weren't able to include in our submission, but I'm very happy to share this research. What the researchers have discovered is that worker voice is integral, not just to reducing social harm, which we were aware about, but actually realising the productivity benefits that AI is offering. Is that having workers, the people who are already aware of work processes, embedded in a process of design, development and implementation, and then crucially also review, can enhance the productivity potential of AI in a way that what is quite often happening at the moment of AI systems being introduced with no consultation, no real awareness, often very, very little training, which doesn't allow working people to maximise the potentials and doesn't allow that to be used to the capacity that it could be used. I'm happy to share that research subsequently as well.
Look, that would be great if you could, Liam. And it could also be something that we potentially discuss if and when we get you back. So thank you for your attendance today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information or have offered, please forward to the Secretariat by Friday, the 23rd of August, 2024. You'll be sent a copy of your transcript of your evidence and will have the opportunity to request any corrections to transcript errors. I'd like to thank members of the committee and their witnesses for their time today and declare this public hearing closed.
State government is preparing to ban local councils from issuing ticketless parking fines. It comes as the number of unsuspecting drivers being booked doubled. Here's Kate Creedon.
Returning to your car to find you've got a parking fine is frustrating, but receiving a ticket in the mail days later is downright rude. Despite the Finance Minister telling councils to cut it out, ticketless parking fines have almost doubled. In the past year, more than 822,000 unsuspecting drivers copped a fine in the post, compared to 551,000 the year before. Now, Courtney Housos is doubling down.
Change is coming. We will intervene. We will use the policy levers at our disposal because we want a fairer system for parking fines in New South Wales.
Currently, 48 councils are issuing ticketless parking fines, raking in $158 million between them. Unsurprisingly, those making the most money are reluctant to give it up. The City of Sydney, North Sydney Council and Canterbury Bankstown Council argue it's safer for parking ranges. But if the government does intervene, they could be forced to revert to traditional parking fines.
Kate, thank you.